Hi guys, and welcome to Rathwulven Bushcraft. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm out in the woods today to do a bit of foraging. I'm gonna practice my plant identification skills. It's early spring. Spring actually started yesterday on the 20th. Today is the 21st of March. And yeah, I just want to see what I can find. So if this is of interest to you, just join me. I'm gonna explain a couple of things on the fly. Also, another remark. This video is going to be linked to another one which I will shoot later on and just put up here in the info box. And the other video is going to be about the 10 core principles that you need to follow if you go foraging. So if you're a beginner, please check that out. But hey, without any further ado, let's get into that terrain here and see what we can find. Off we go. So here is our first find. Let me just zoom in for you. Here. This plant right here. That's Stellaria media, also known as chickweed. And let me just get a flower for you, because now those plants are still really tender and really small. So all the attributes are not particularly well developed. But if we take a look at this, we do see this star-shaped type of pattern of the flower, right? Which is kind of embedded in a 5-pointed star type of like calyx. And it looks as if it had 10 petals, but that's actually just 5, which are split in the middle. Maybe you can see this on the video here. So that is already an indicator that we're dealing with this wonderful plant. Also really important to know that the leaves do have this kind of egg shape, type of form, right? And also this plant is kind of crawling, so if we take a look right here, it almost looks as if it's crawling across the forest floor. And also very interesting, if we're pulling these, do you see this? It's like as if there's a gut in there. That's why we also call it the chicken gut in German, for example, or the mice gut, because it kind of like looks like intestines. See, if you pull that. That's already an indicator that we're dealing with Stellaria media here. And it's an amazing plant because it has a lot of curative attributes. It has a lot of vitamins, it has a lot of minerals, and it's just great for types of spinaches or such. So already a really cool find. Also really important about that plant, it almost grows throughout the entire year, so that's the reason why we can find it now. And it's pretty easy to spot, you know, it's gonna be everywhere. If you just take a look at the ground, pretty easy to be spotted. Also an indicator, by the way, if you take a look at the leaves right here. They're always orientated to the opposite of the stem, like one here and one there. So if you look at that from the top, it kind of like goes like this, and then like this, and like this again, and then like this. What's also really important to notice, I don't know if you can see this, let me just get that closer. It always has one line of hair right at one side of the stem. It's not hairy all around the stem, but it just has this one line that goes from one node to the other. And then if I turn this again, see, there's hair developing right here again, and then we do have a line of hair right here again, and that's already enough to basically identify this plant. So go and look for that. It's just an amazing wild edible. I'm gonna gather something of that now. And just in case you think that I'm fooling with you, it's actually edible, look. And it's also pretty tasty. It has this really fresh, almost cress-like taste to that. Give it a try. Right here is another little patch, and if we just zoom in, as you can see right here, we don't have any flower yet, so this one could actually be confused with one of the doppelgangers of the Stellaria media, which would be the Scarlet Pimpernel. Please be aware that the Scarlet Pimpernel is toxic. So you have to make sure that you properly identify your plants before you eat them. But those ones would be good to eat. Chickweed, just amazing. And here we have a bit of wood sorrel, just a tiny patch right here on the forest floor. Please do note that those are not clovers. Some people have this common misconception that clovers and sorrels are the same thing. They're two different varieties of plants, and both are kind of edible. The wood sorrel though, the one that we see right here, does contain oxalic acid, and oxalic acid is harmful to your liver and to your kidneys. So don't eat a lot of that herb here, because it's simply not good for your health. So here we got a close-up, so you can have a look. If it would flower right now, there would also be very distinct white flowers in our region. If you're from the United States, you might also have a variety that grows yellow flower petals. And just to show you that they're edible, that's definitely oxalis, and you can actually taste that. It's tasting like lemon, almost like lime. It has this very citric taste, and it's really refreshing. It's really awesome. I like the taste the most, I guess, from all the wild herbs that are growing around here. But yeah, again, do it in moderation due to the oxalic acid, alright? Here's another interesting plant. To be honest, I forgot the English name. I think it was something like wild mustard or mustard garlic, if I'm right. But I'm just gonna put the name in the subtitles. In German we would call that Gundermann, actually. And it's kind of like a mustard-like tasting plant. And it's also like a wild edible. It's kind of like a spice herb, so to speak. But I want to show you something else, because at this very early stage, it's pretty difficult to make sure whether you're actually dealing with this plant. Let me just show you a doppelganger. So here's a great example of how misleading plants can be in their very early stage, because this is the Gundermann, if you can see that, but this plant is a different plant. So if we take those two leaves and just compare them to each other, they look kind of similar. Like if you pay close attention to the teeth right here and how you got these zigzag patterns, and here basically the very straight edge, you could manage to identify them properly. But if you're not trained, then of course you might confuse them, right? So here we have another classic, and probably you could identify that plant already. Everybody knows it. It's a dandelion. Can be identified by its rather pointy teeth right here. It's almost like a saw blade, or like elongated leaves with barbs basically. And even though this plant is fully edible, so including the roots, including the flower cob, including the leaves, we need to be really careful if we eat certain varieties of dandelions, because there's more than 100 species out there, and some of them contain a lot of tannins and they're not particularly easy to digest, right? And it's also important to note that pregnant women should not eat dandelion, as well as people that are suffering from diabetes or are taking blood thinning medicine or also diuretic medicine, because there's kind of like a cross reaction between elements or kind of components that are in the dandelion, and they would react with the respective chemistry of that body that takes these medications or is pregnant. So it's always important to only eat dandelion in moderation. And if you just want to go for the part with the most calories, get yourself a digging stick like this. Just go in there, lift it up, and then just, if you can see it right here, take out the root and eat the root. So actually that's pretty cool right here. We do have two edible, usable and medicinal plants right next to each other, right here. This here is a Plantago variety. It's Plantago lanceolata, which in English would be a plantain. And there's about 250 different species of those. They can all be eaten. And they're really awesome because they do work against sinus congestion. They are an anti-inflammatory, and they also are known for the psyllium, which are the seeds. You can buy them at any kind of reform store or so. And what's also really important about that plant actually, do not use those for wounds, because they are astringent, and some survival teachers tell you to just rub them into open wounds, but you should never do this for a very simple reason. They are growing at the ground right here, so they are predestined to contain Chloristrida. That's kind of like a sort of bacterium, or family of bacteria that is causing tetanus, for example. So never use them for open wounds. You can use them for treatments of like a sore mouth if you boil them beforehand or so. But yeah, just make sure that you do proper research before you use this plant. Then right next to it is this one here, with these really beautifully feathered type of leaves. They usually are either double feathered or even quadruple feathered, and that's Achillea millefolium, which is also known as the common yarrow. It's an astringent. It helps against menstrual complaints or menstrual bleeding, for example, any kind of post-menstrual kind of symptoms, pre-menstrual kind of symptoms. So make use of that if you want to. They're also antiseptic, and they make a great tea. Just be aware to not confuse them with hemlock or other umbelliferae, which is basically the umbel-shaped type of family, which looks like this. You kind of like have these flower cups that look like so. Do proper research and make sure you can identify both of them. They're really handy, especially for medicinal purposes. And here we have another classic, goes without explanation. The stinging nettle can be eaten. The seeds are high in oils, so they're a really great source of nutrition. And when it comes to the leaves, you probably had nettle tea before, right? It's a great diuretic, so why not use that? This one here is an interesting one, because if you've seen one of the latest videos on wild garlic, I'm also gonna put it up in the info box, just check it out later. This is one of the lookalikes of the wild garlic, which is sometimes mistaken for wild garlic, and that's the meadow saffron. Here you can see the rose-shaped growth. It comes from one center and they don't have any kind of leaf stems. If you want to see the details, just check out the information right up here. But it's cool that I found one, so you can have one for a comparison, right? Cool. So, and as far as we were talking about bacteria on the ground, funnily enough, just like a couple of meters further, I found some more chickweed, and if you just take a close look right here, you can see that there's feces, so you should not go and forage there. A really good example of how you need to make sure that you're checking your entire surroundings before you actually take some of those plants and process them, because those there might be contaminated. Alright, so to wrap up the video, a couple of thoughts, okay? First and foremost, as you could see, there's plenty of resources out there, and you can even go forage in early spring, so that's amazing. But nevertheless, please be aware of the fact that foraging as such is a craft. As you can see, I'm still carrying 3 of my maybe 25 to 30 books on foraging and medicinal herbs with me today, because if I'm in doubt I can check them. And yeah, besides that, I also got my research that I have been engaging in throughout the last couple of years. All the plants you saw, I've been studying for at least 4 years, if not longer. So just take your time if you start foraging. If you want concrete tips on how to get started, again, just check out the video that I'm gonna put in the information box below this video. And yeah, the only thing I can say is dedicate yourself to one plant at a time, you know, take your simple steps, baby steps, and just go forward bit by bit, because it's a learning process. It's great to do, and you will see that this feeling of foraging your own food is really fulfilling, right? So yeah, if you like this video, please do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, please subscribe to the channel, please leave a comment if you have a question or any remark, and besides that, also make sure that your research is always thorough, never take any chances, but nevertheless enjoy the outdoors. So have a great day. Bye bye. Well, I'm back. Here's a little bonus. Just look at this. Really beautiful jelly ear fungus all the way. I will make a separate video on that soon, so stick around.